Hi, everyone. The League of Women Voters of Illinois is thrilled to welcome you to Issues Briefing 2022. My name is Allison Hout, and it is my honor to serve as the president of the League of Women Voters of Illinois. The League of Women Voters' mission to empower voters and defend democracy depends on our ability to engender civic engagement and provide access to information. Our annual Issues Briefing is a point in time where we gather to do just that, seek information and understanding to educate ourselves and each other, and use information as the basis for generating civic engagement, advocacy for change, and voting. We gather together so that we can decide what matters most to us to become not just advocates for change, but catalysts for change. That word, think about that word, catalyst. An event like this is an opportunity to move forward, leaving the reassuring sounds of our echo chamber and work for change in our communities, where we listen to understand, we collaborate, we educate, and we engage others. What we know about civic engagement and education is this: people who have information and people who are engaged, those are the people who are more likely to be voters. We each have a voice through our vote, and that voice, our vote, each of our votes must be heard. Ultimately, that is where our true strength lies. So let us all educate and activate. Let's see more people using their vote to speak up about what matters most to them. Today, in our world, which is fraught with news of threats to freedom, we are going to focus on equity and freedom here at home in Illinois. We're going to be learning about barriers to employment, housing, education, and civil engagement for people who have been arrested or convicted of crimes. I urge you to listen actively, ask questions, and be ready to take what you learn into your community, to your family, your friends, your neighbors. Educate, activate, and create opportunities for civic engagement. If you talk to one family member, you've done that. You've created an opportunity for civic engagement. Before we begin, I remind you that our meeting today is being recorded. Subtitles have been enabled today. If you would like to activate, enlarge, or end the subtitles, you can use the bar at the bottom of your screen. Toward the end of our session, we will have a question and answer period. During the session, you may put your questions directly into the chat and add them as a direct message to Question Asker. League members will pose the questions to the speakers at the end. Please join me in welcoming our American Sign Language interpreters for today, Sheila Kettering and Molly Burke. And thank you to our League of Women Voters of Illinois Board of Directors, the entire League of Women Voters of Illinois Issues and Advocacy Committee, and everyone who has been a part of putting together this fantastic week of education and activation. So now we're going to turn off our phones. We're going to lean in and engage. Janet Kittless, who is our Issues and Advocacy Specialist for Criminal Justice, will start us off. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the 6th session of the 2022 League of Women Voters of Illinois Issues Briefing. This session is entitled, "How Can People with Arrest or Criminal Records Ever Become Fully Free?" Many of us probably believe that once someone has completed his or her involvement with the criminal justice system, that they're able to go home and resume a normal life. But nothing could be further from the truth, and today we will learn about the hardships and the barriers that people with records encounter, even when they're considered fully free. Marlon Chamberlain is manager of the Fully Free campaign, a campaign to remove these barriers that people with records face so that they do, in fact, become fully free. Marlon will be telling us a bit about the campaign first before introducing our panel and serving as moderator. Marlon brings over 20 years of lived and professional experience to his advocacy work at Heartland Alliance. His bio and the bios of the panel are available at the League website, and I do encourage you to find those and read them. And be sure to take advantage of the resources that are there as well. The League of Women Voters of Illinois is a member of the Fully Free campaign. We hope to leave some time for questions. Please put them in the chat. And so now I will turn it over to Marlon.
Thank you, Janet, and good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I am coming to you live from Springfield, Illinois right now. I am from Chicago, but I'm here. And as soon as we finish the Zoom call, I will continue lobbying. We actively have a bill that we introduced this session. So I will be going back to work as soon as we finish this call. But I wanted to start off first with just saying that we definitely appreciate the support from the Women League voters. And we also appreciate the endorsement and all of the help and support that we've received thus far in this campaign. So I just wanted to start off just acknowledging that. And just to give you sort of some history about the Fully Free campaign, this campaign was started in 2019 with the release of the Never Fully Free report, which was released from Heartland Alliance, which really outlined the hundreds of barriers that people face with arrest and conviction records. Some of the work that we've done thus far and sort of how I describe the campaign is in three buckets. The first bucket is we are continuing to do statewide organizing because the goal is to really build out a statewide table to help us introduce legislation, but also push it across the finish line. And so in last year, we were able to launch the campaign in 11 cities or 12 cities across the state. We'll talk more about that in detail as we continue the dialogue with our panelists. But we were able to launch in 12 cities. Each one of these launch events were in partnership with reentry organizations, the faith community, folks from academia, and then really just folks from the community. And so we were able to partner and really set up and organize these different launch events. And also we wanted to educate folks across the state around the hundreds of permanent punishments that people face after incarceration. The second bucket is we want to continue lifting up the stories of those that have arrest or conviction records, that are doing well. And so we want to lift up the stories to really control and introduce a new narrative that tells our story, that gives us ownership as we tell our stories. Because what we do know is that there's an estimated 3.3 million people currently living in the state with an arrest or conviction record. And so we want to lift up as many of those stories as possible so people can hear about all of the barriers that people face even after they've completed their sentence. And then the third bucket is introducing legislation to eliminate all permanent punishments or eliminate policy that creates permanent punishments. And we want to restore the civil and human rights of individuals after they've completed their sentence. Just to give you some brief context about myself, in 2002, I was sentenced to a 20-year federal prison sentence. But in 2010, as a result of the Fair Sentencing Act, my sentence was reduced from 20 to 14 years. And so I served 10 and a half years in federal prison. I've been home now. It'll be 10 years on November 23rd of this year. I'm a college student, a homeowner, I'm married. And just last year, I couldn't take my son on a school field trip to a bowling alley. His teachers asked me to participate because they see how involved I am in my son's education, but because of a 25-year-old conviction, I was denied an opportunity to chaperone my son. And so I missed the opportunity to ride with my son on that school bus and to help him and support him on a bowling trip. And so, and we'll talk more about the barriers that individuals face across the state, but I just wanted to give you sort of some background on how I got involved in this campaign and why this is important to me. And so I'm going to dive right in, and I love having panel discussions, especially with people who I consider my brothers and sister in this work and in this movement. And so as we start off, I just wanted to give each one of our panelists an opportunity to just introduce yourself and tell us why you're involved with the Fully Free campaign, starting with Maria. Ladies first.
First and foremost, I want to thank everybody for being here today and listening to our stories. My name is Maria Garza. I am a community activist, a restorative justice practitioner. I work for Heartland Alliance as executive coordinator for the Ready Chicago team and Ready Center for Impact. And I am a Hispanic woman voter. I am connected with the Fully Free campaign because being somebody that served 12 years in the Illinois penal system, upon re-entry, I suffered some of the permanent punishments that most of us face upon re-entering society. One of them was getting a job within the medical field. Because of my felony conviction, I have to get a medical waiver to be able to work in the medical field of at any type of level, even if it's just administrative, even if I never see a patient or touch medication, even if it's just filing papers or cleaning, I would need to get a medical waiver. And to get that medical waiver, I would have to be 5 years past my release date. And I would have to go through a lot of loopholes to get this certification through the Department of Health, through the Illinois Department of Health. So that is one of the reasons why I fully support the Fully Free campaign, because again, it's a permanent punishment after I have served my time to not be able to work or apply for a job that I know I'm qualified for because my past conviction and laws say that I cannot. And I'll pass it back to Marlon.
Thank you, Maria. Can we have Gregory Chambers next?
Good afternoon, everybody, and I am so glad to be here. I'm glad you guys have allowed me into your space. My name is Greg Chambers, and I am a policy organizer for Live Free Illinois, and and I'm also on the governing board of directors for the Fully Free campaign. Now, what brought me to the Fully Free campaign? It's a long story, but I'm gonna shorten it up for you. Bottom line is this. I'm a former Chicago police officer who was convicted of a felony. I entered into a situation where I had a loss of a loved one that was tragic and unexpected. And my brother, who was 364 days my junior. And it hit me hard. It hit me hard, and I suffered what some would characterize, what some have characterized as a nervous breakdown, which led me to self-medicate by drinking and drugging, which led me to term in the Department of Corrections. I served in the Department of Corrections for a number of years. And when I served in the Department of Corrections, I realized that I came from an institution that targeted people like myself, people like the people who I was serving a sentence with. And I was sitting down and I was learning people, and I had an opportunity to have people like me be humanized, because it was not humanization before. Before, it was a culture of policing that said, lock them up and throw away the key. That was the numbers games that we were playing. And I was subject to that. And so when I got there, I realized that the people that I was locking up and putting in prison and that I was forced and compelled to sleep with now, you know, I'm here, I'm sleeping, I'm breaking bread, I'm eating, I'm working out in the gym, going to school, taking classes and things like that with these very same people. I'm working in the law library, providing legal services for these very same people. I am a peer health educator for these very same people. And I realized that these are human beings and they need help. They need help. And I said, what is the better way for me to do? I have to change my way. I have to go from being of a prosecutorial nature to a defense, a restorative justice type nature. And so upon coming out, prior to coming out, I drafted a bill to help a restorative justice, a restorative sentencing act. And then I got connected with people who are in this field. And I joined Live Free. And when I joined Live Free, I learned about the Fully Free campaign. And I said, this is exactly the work that I'm supposed to do. This is the road that I've traveled. I have traveled from policing to prison to political activism. And that is why I'm here in this Fully Free campaign, because I know that these permanent barriers that we who are formerly incarcerated face are oppressive and need to be removed. And that's why I'm with the Fully Free campaign.
Thank you, Greg. And I just want to point out just quickly, like something that Maria and both Greg said around just like humanizing people. And so as we continue this conversation, and because I've had an opportunity to really get to know Javier, Maria, and Greg, like they're like family to me. Like we've been over each other's houses, we celebrate holidays together. And so I just want to just continue to lift up that we are real people. And it's ironic because I know Greg was here last week. And as we talk to legislators, a lot of times like we have to point out as they give examples of like why they may not want to support a bill, we have to point out that these extreme examples that you're trying to give, like we're standing right in front of you. And so instead of creating this sort of monster or this boogeyman that we think exists, we have to point back at the fact that like as a person living with the felony conviction, I'm standing right in front of you. I'm not this spooky creature that lives in a closet that's waiting to come out and to terrorize people. I'm actually a father, someone who loves my children and loves my wife and wants to contribute and make Illinois a better state. And so I just wanted to point that out because I think that's important as we talk about removing these permanent punishments, is to make sure that we humanize folks, even as we talk about the issue, and that we use people first language. And last but least, Javier Reyes, can you jump in and tell us about yourself and why you're connected to the Fully Free campaign?
Unmuted. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having me. My name is Javier Reyes. I'm the executive director and founder of Challenge to Change, and I also sit on the board of Fully Free. Wow, it's so surreal because just a year and a half ago, just a little over a year and a half ago, my view was totally different from what it is right now. Being part of the Fully Free campaign has really opened my eyes to how there's so many laws that directly affect us coming home. You hear a lot of people say, oh, you have to pay your debt to society. What they didn't tell us was that this debt comes with interest. We are never able to finish paying this debt off because of the interest that trickles down not only to us, but to our family. And just like Marlon said, he wasn't able to attend his son's field trip. And these are stories that echo throughout our communities so much. And I'll give you an example of Celia Colon, which is the founder of Giving Others Dreams. She was not able to chaperone her daughter's 8th grade graduation dance. And the most ironic thing was that they handed her daughter the envelope telling her that why she couldn't attend because she was a felon. So these are the laws that exist here. And they don't only affect us, but they affect our families as well. It's trickling down to our errors and our mistakes in society have now become a household thing. Because it, like I said, it doesn't only affect us, but it directly affects our family as well. Being part of the Fully Free campaign has given me an opportunity to really dig deep into who I am and to see how society views us, and to be able to change the narrative, to show folks, like Marlon says, that we're not these boogeymen. You know, we're law-abiding citizens. We're fathers, we're husbands, we're homeowners. We're community activists. We volunteer in so many facets of our communities to uplift and build. And all of that stuff really doesn't matter if you look at us on paper. So we want to remove those barriers. And I'll give you an example. When I first came home, I applied for so many jobs. I'm a college graduate with an associate's in behavior and social science. I couldn't find a job. I literally had to get a job almost as if I was illegal. Like if I was not even part of this country, I had to go and work, you know, getting paid under the table because I could not get a job. I'm going in, and then as soon as I check that box, and one time I didn't check it, and I lasted 3 weeks on the job. and even created a whole way for their shipping and receiving to work more effectively, but was called into office to tell me, Javier, we have to let you go because you're a felon. So yes, these permanent punishments, they have no room in society, in a working society. So I'm just grateful to be here, part of this panel, and Fully Free is something that has become a staple in my life.
Thank you, Javier. I love to give this analogy. It's almost like a doctor looking at my medical records from when I was 13 or 14 years old and making a diagnosis of me as a grown person. My medical records are ineffective and outdated. And so that's what we think about when we think about how individuals use the criminal record to so-called predict future behavior, which is, there's no scientific evidence that proves that this is an effective sort of measure of predicting future behavior. But one thing that we do know is that folks living in poverty are more likely to commit a crime. So that is something that we do know that's also rooted in data. And one of the things that I love about the Fully Free campaign is that we have been able to do legislative research where we were able to really scrub the entire Illinois code to identify these hundreds of permanent punishments and to also understand how they operate, where are the trends and gaps. And I think one of the things that we'll be able to do as we move forward with this campaign is really put language to where, when in the past we would say, well, there are a lot of barriers that are hindering us from moving forward. Now we'll be able to say that as a person living with the felony conviction, I am not able to act as the executor or administrator over an estate. So we'll have actual language to really educate people and also communicate how these hundreds of permanent punishments are really impacting our daily lives. I want to now go back to Maria. You mentioned, or in your bio, it talks about how you are a restorative justice practitioner, and you note that your work really revolves around healing people who carry the trauma of incarceration. Can you explain to us what you mean by the trauma of incarceration?
Yes, well, there comes a point where when you enter the prison system, when it hits your actions and the consequences of your actions, you believe that within the system that you are going to live, that you trust that what they promote, which is rehabilitation, reunification, and reintegration into society, is something that you will be helped along the way to become a better person, to change the way you think, the way you act, the way you respond to any scenarios, which are a lot of the reasons why we ultimately end up in the prison system. But during that time, not only is it facing those you've directly or indirectly, have harmed, it's also everybody else who's impacted by your incarceration. Like in my case, my son and my daughter. I left them when they were 9 and 10. So they were little, and everything they had to go through, being in different homes with family, trying to find their way away from their mom. And again, my mother, who works for a federal agency, what she had to face because of my charge. So all of that brings pain. And then there's acceptance, acceptance brings pain as well. And then there are those that I shared time with that I didn't have a bad upbringing. So there really was no excuse for me. But there are many that I shared rooms with, cells with, showers, bathrooms with, that did have bad upbringings. And yes, so it's trying to help them deal with the events that led up to the event that has them incarcerated, and building them up to know that they are now different people, and that re-entering into society should be better than going in to the prison system.
Thank you, Maria. And I would also just lift up that I think a part of the trauma that individuals face during incarceration is the fact that the entire process is dehumanizing. And so in prison, you're not addressed as a person, you're addressed by a number. And so that's a part of it. I also just think about how we're treated like livestock, like animals, the way they sort of like usher us around. I think about, as Maria talked about, the family separation and how it's hard to communicate and really provide and protect your family. So it's a lot of like just sadness and hurt that goes along with you sitting in prison, not to mention just the negative stigma of how a lot of correctional officers treat you while you're incarcerated. And so people come home with all of this. And so I would just add, and thank you, Maria, for lifting up that issue, because a lot of times when we talk about reentry or we talk about barriers, we don't lift up how our families are impacted while we're incarcerated. I want to go to Greg next. Greg, you mentioned in your intro that you were a police officer. My question for you is, and you also mentioned that you realized the injustices that others were experiencing while you were incarcerated. Could you tell us like how and what led you to embrace like the restorative justice practices and how you were able to sort of facilitate and to implement like some of these practices while you were incarcerated?
Well, you know, prior to coming, I was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was going to Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. And one thing I heard there is that sometimes it takes for a person to hit rock bottom before he or she decides that they want help, that they want to change. And when I, as a police officer, had cuffs slapped on my hands, and I was faced with going to the Department of Corrections for a significant portion of my life, that was my rock bottom. And when I was at my rock bottom, it forced me, while I was inside of those cells, to reflect in retrospect what went wrong. What went wrong? Where did I go wrong? And self-medicating after the death of my brother was the catalyst. And when I started drinking and drugging, that was the catalyst. But when I got to, and so when I walked in those gates, I said, this is not what I want. This is, like Maria, I didn't grow up in gangs. I didn't grow up committing crimes. I was a nice kid, a little league team, taking martial arts and all that stuff. I went to college and I was wondering, this wasn't supposed to happen to me, but life happens. And so when I was there and I was sitting there and I said, what do I have to do? Well, what I know I have to do is when I get out of this situation, I had to leave alcohol alone. I had to leave drugs alone. And while I was sitting there and I got into a law library, first year of my incarceration, I was in the law library and I was listening to guys come there and they were talking about abuses at the hand of police. And they were talking about how they were treated unfairly and unjustly. And as a former police officer, I was sitting there and listening to many of their stories saying, well, I know you're telling the truth. Now, I know that when regular society hears these stories from a person who's locked up, who's incarcerated, they say, well, they're lying. The police don't do that. But as a police officer, I'm sitting here listening to those stories saying, yeah, we do sometimes do that. You know, I'm not saying everybody was telling the truth. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm saying is I know that sometimes a lot of people were telling the truth. And I realized that. And so as I was sitting back trying to help people get out of the mess that we put them in, I said, the society put them in. Because it is all of these unjust laws that we are trying to attack right now that are on the books that help us get into those situations. It is the rogue police officers out there that help get into those situations, get us into those situations. It is the unfairness that is doled out by legislators and society to help get us into those situations. And we're saying, hey, just pay attention to this. Look at this. You can change this. We can be better. And so that's what I said. I was sitting there and I'm thinking, I can be better than this. I can be better than being the one with a prosecutorial attitude, lock them up and throw away the key. Because I'm sitting here with guys. And so here's the point. I was sitting back and people were coming there, and some people came to me and some of these people, I realized they went to school. I went to high school with me. They went to high school with my brothers. And I'm like, this could be my little brothers here or something like that. Wouldn't I want somebody to help my little brothers? Wouldn't I want somebody to help me? And so I said, to whatever extent I can, I am going to help these people, these brothers and sisters who are marginalized and oppressed. I'm going to help them. And so I started learning about the restorative justice programs and the concept of restorative justice. And I started studying that stuff. And I started getting with people in the Department of Corrections who were a part of that. And I said, you know what? This is what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. When I get out of here, I am going to help make the system better. And whether it's making the police department better, because when I went to prison and I was on the police force, the police departments didn't have wellness programs. And when I reached out for help, I couldn't get help. I reached out for help. They told me, pull yourself up by your bootstraps. There's nothing wrong with you. Pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And I'm like, what? Really? That's the answer you have for the problems that I have? Come on, it runs deeper than this. And that's what Fully Free is about. That's what restorative justice is about. It's about realizing the core of the problem and getting down to the root of it and digging that root up and planting good seeds. And that's what we're doing. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to plant good seeds. And I'm a good man. I was raised by a good family. I made mistakes and I paid for those mistakes with a lot of years of my life. My kids grew up without their dad because I paid with a lot of years of my life. But that's over with. I'm here. They let me out. I got all this in the background, all that freedom back there. And that's what I'm for, fully free. That's all.
Thank you, Greg. And I just want to celebrate like our panelists, because I'm for certain, I know Greg is pushing 2 years home, but Maria, I think, has been home maybe 7 to 8 months. Javier, maybe a little over a year. And so we're talking about people that served a substantial amount of time in prison, but as soon as they were released. I think I met Maria when she was 3 months out. And Maria was ready to go. Same with Javier. And that's what's exciting, because in most cases, people don't hear about how individuals in prison were helping people. And then once they were released, they come out and they get involved immediately. So I just wanted to celebrate that and thank you both, Maria and Greg and Javier, for the work that you do. This next question is for Javier. We know that one way to do away with barriers faced by incarcerated people is to not incarcerate them or to tag them with the felony in the first place. And Javier, with the work that you do with officials and county prosecutors, specifically in Kane, DuPage, and Kendall County, where you assist with alternative programs that divert citizens away from incarceration. Could you tell us a little bit more about the diversion program and sort of like what your vision is versus with alternative sentences versus sending people to prison?
Yeah, Marlon, speaking of that, me and Maria were actually rushing to get to this meeting. We met with Sheriff Ron Hain. We met with his team today regarding a transitional home. And I'm also working with the Kane County prosecutor, Jamie Mosser. They're part of a diversion program with Jennifer Peacock and Martha Patchkey. They are forming a task force which diverts people from going to jail. And I'll give you an example of why do we keep sending Jose to prison every time he's being caught with small amounts of crack? Well, because we don't have a solution of why he's doing that. We're not understanding why he's doing that. Obviously, there's a poverty issue. There's a substance abuse problem. So with the diversion program, we're finding alternative routes. We're finding out exactly what's going on in this person's life. We're doing an assessment. We're getting them the correct help that they need to understand why this is happening in their life. And eventually, once like Greg said, he had to hit rock bottom. But I also think that a lot of our greatness comes at our darkest moments. That's when we really, really, really shine. When we are at our darkest moments. So if given the opportunity and alternatives, people can say, you know what, I can do this, versus putting the handcuffs on them, running them through the gauntlet. Same thing. They go in front of a judge. They're sick of seeing Jose. So his thing is just like, Jose, you're gone. You know, so Jose gets trapped in the system. He's in there with the same mentality, like, this never works. You know, no one cares. I'm just addicted, and here I go again, back in jail. So with the diversion program, we're focusing on what's the root of the problem. Why is Jose continuing to do drugs? So by understanding the root of the problem, we're able to come up with better solutions of incarceration. We're working on the first ever all-inclusive program, which is a facility that has everything that you can imagine, from substance abuse to mental health, hard skills, soft skills, training through the Department of Labor, Maria's dog training program. Through Maria's contacts, we're giving folks viable opportunities to be productive citizens with meaningful jobs, careers. Not only like, oh, we want you to go work in a factory. No, that's okay to do for you to come home to get acclimated and get some money. But we want to create leaders. We want to get folks to be entrepreneurs, to own their own business, to know what it is to be productive citizens in society, contributing back to their communities. So with all that said, Fully Free is almost like a catapult. It's a springboard to everything else. To be able to understand the permanent punishment that exists, to be around like-minded individuals who have just a desire to correct the wrong. I was posed this question in 2007 by Mr. Leroy Staley, who was the supervisor of recreation in Yazoo, Mississippi Federal Prison. He asked me one day, Javier, have you done the best you can in life? I did not understand the power of words until that day. I went back in my room. I didn't even want to come out to rec for a whole week, because I would look in the mirror and say, man, have I been the best dad? Have I been the best son? Have I been the best, person in my community? And the answer was no. To every single time I looked in that mirror and asked the question, have I been the best that I can? So from that day forward, Challenge to Change came about, mentoring guys that were coming through, changing the way they view their community, changing how they view prison, changing how they view society, how they view police, changing how they view the whole dynamics of words, what loyalty means, what love means. Because coming from the streets, all those words, I promise you, have different meanings. What you're loyal to, who you love. So when you take ownership of these words and give them true meanings, like fully free, think about being fully free. Just think about you not being able to come out of your home. Just maybe think about you not being able to purchase something. Those are the permanent punishments that we have to undergo every single day, not just one person, but all of us with a record. So this doesn't affect just like Marlon or Mr. Chambers or Maria or me. No, this affects those 3.3 million people who are here in Illinois with felonies. And Marlon has done an exceptional job with scrubbing the statute, and it's disgusting. It truly is. And not to be funny, but one of the laws that really kind of like just piqued my interest, you can't own a falconry bird if you're a felon. Yeah, it's so you think like, what was the mentality behind when they did this law? You know, do you have this bird and you're like, hey, bird, when they open that bank door, you're gonna fly in there and just grab the big bills. Don't grab there's a die pack. Don't get that die pack. So you know, you kind of think about how these laws came about, and wow, and to be real brief, there's another one, bingo. If I'm playing bingo with my grandma and someone doesn't like that I'm winning and knows that I've been to prison, he can just say, hey, this guy's a felon. He cannot be in the bingo establishment. And here I go, and I'll get escorted out of a bingo establishment because I'm a felon. So being part of Fully Free is really giving me the opportunity to be fully free. It's giving me the opportunity to create avenues for others to be fully free, to highlight what fully free really means. Thank you, Marlon.
Thank you, Javier. And one thing I want to say, that what I love about the work that we do is that we have fun while we do the work as well. Like, we love to laugh and to celebrate, like, as we learn and grow and educate people. And what I love about what Javier said is we're focused on the why and not the what. We're focused on the root of like what led individuals down this road in the first place versus what did you do? He also talked about when you create diversion programs or alternatives to prison, you give people opportunities to learn and to change and to grow. Because one thing I do want to say is that prison is not about rehabilitation. It's about housing people. And so what happens is people go and they sit and they sit and they sit, and then they release folks. And now folks have all of these legal barriers that they have to navigate. In most cases, they're returning to communities that have limited opportunities. And then there's the shame and the stigma and the negative connotations that come with having a record. So it's almost like you're in this cycle where you just begin to go in and out the system. But I wanted to, and this sort of leads to our next question. One of the things that I sort of heard as a common theme from all of our panelists is that they were able to really implement what they felt was needed for them, that maybe would have diverted them from going to prison. And so my next question for the panelists is, why is it important for directly impacted people to lead this campaign? And I'm gonna start with Greg this time.
This is the best question ever. I think this is the most important question that you could have asked. Why is it important for directly impacted people to lead this campaign? One thing that I've said is that as a police officer, I've never knew, when I put cuffs on people, when I sent people to jail and to prison, I never knew what happened to them afterwards. And I never even cared. I can't speak for anybody else, but I never knew and I never cared. It was just that we got a bad guy off the street, we put cuffs on him, and we put him in there. I don't know his background. I don't know whether he's sang in a church choir or whatever. I don't know anything about him. We got a bad guy off the street and put him in that place. But when I got arrested and I started going through some of the same things we sent them through, I started to realize this is what happens here. This is the injustice. This is where the injustice is. This is the injustice inside of the Department of Corrections. This is the injustice after you get outside of the Department of Corrections. And so there's a saying where they say that you have to, in order to be effective and to change something, you have to have gone through something. If you haven't gone through it, you don't know what it's like. How can you speak up about the injustices of people in prison if you've never been to prison? I sit on a panel with the Illinois Mental Health Summit, And I was in the middle of Illinois Mental Health Summit. And one thing, my first meeting there, I realized, I looked around and I said, I'm the only person here with lived experience. But you guys are supporting and talking about laws that impact people with lived experience. But you don't know what they go through. That's why it's important that this effort be led with people with lived experience, because we know what needs to change. We know what impacted us. We know what oppressed us. We know what marginalized us. And we know how to bring about change. If you've never been there, you can't know. You can't know. You can only listen to other people tell you, but you can't know. And we know.
Thank you, Greg. Can we go to Javi next? Javier?
Okay. The people closest to the problem are the people closest to the solution. Saying that, I use this analogy, and we do this a lot. I can read a book on how to ride a bike all day long. I can read that book for years. Until I get on that bike and physically ride it, I won't know what that experience is. So you can't try to understand the injustice that has happened to us by just telling our story, because it's not the same. You have to walk in our shoes pretty much to really understand the way the system has deteriorated, how that word corrections should be nowhere near related to anything that has to do with prison. Like Marlon said, this isn't a place for corrections. You don't get the services that help you to be a productive citizen. There's nothing coming out of these prison systems that prepare you to come home to a society that doesn't accept you. So being that we are in the front of this work, it gives a clear view of exactly what needs to be done. It gives a clear view of the process and the time that it takes to actually put together something that reflects what we went through, not what I think they went through or what I read in a book that maybe happened. No, you need to hear directly from folks that have been impacted by the justice system on how this does not work, in order to find a viable way to really find solutions that really are it's a matter of life and death. I can't even sugarcoat it, because a lot of folks that come home don't get the opportunity to be productive citizens, don't get that meaningful. And I say this to end real quick. Everyone talks about, oh yeah, let's give them a second chance. Well, how about a first chance? How about to all the folks that were never really given a first chance? So that second chance really has no meaning.
Good stuff. Maria. You're on mute, Maria.
I lift up what both Javier and Gregory say. Like many of you, I'm sure didn't know that we couldn't be in a bingo hall, or that we couldn't have a specific bird in our house. So clearly it does show that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. I know Marlon's passion for this came out of the fact that he couldn't be the executor of his father's, of one of his loved ones' estate. So to look and then think, well, how many other of these permanent punishments exist with, and things as simple as going to a bingo hall and, you know, having a specific bird in your home, or wanting to work in the medical field. You know, what if that job What if that job is what made a difference from somebody staying clean and staying positive? You know, even if it was in janitorial, which is now called environmental services, but whatever you want to call it, I mean, still there are those barriers that restrict people from doing something as simple as that. And so, yes, thank you, Marlon.
No, thank you. And we have about, I believe, about 6 minutes left before we open up for questions. So I want Greg to talk us through what the FREE Act is about. And before Greg begins, I do just want to say that this year we decided to introduce the FREE Act and only introduce one bill, because this year there's a short session. We know that this it's an election year, and so we decided to introduce just the FREE Act because we wanted to show the broader impact of permanent punishments outside of housing and employment. But the goal is in 2023, over the summer, we're going to continue educating the community, traveling across the state and educating folks. And the goal is in 2023, we're going to introduce an omnibus package where we sort of like look at like chunks of legislation that we can introduce to eliminate all of these permanent punishments. But I want Greg to, if you can, Greg, could you give us a summary of what the FREE Act is about?
Absolutely. Now, the FREE Act removes language that prohibits people who have served their time and returned back to society from being able to serve as an executor or administrator of a loved one's estate. It specifically removes a language providing that a person who has been convicted of a felony is not qualified to act as executor or administrator. Now, I just want to give you an example because Marlon talks about a lot of stories and he didn't tell this story, but I'm going to tell it briefly for him. But last year, Marlon's father died. Marlon was supposed to be the executor of his will, but Marlon could not be the executor of his will because Marlon has a conviction on his record. Now, I want you guys to take I want you guys to take a moment and think about that. Marlon's father committed no crime. Marlon's father just wanted his son to be the person who managed his estate when he died. But he could not have that solely because Marlon had a criminal conviction on his record that was so old, 16, 20 years old, however old it was. But that was a right that wasn't taken from Marlon. It's not Marlon's right. It's not my right. It's not Javier's right or Maria's right. It's none of our right, but it's the loved one's right. It's our mother's right. It's our father's right. It's our grandfather's right. It's our grandmother's right. It's our wives' right or our husband's right, our brother or our sister, whoever the family member is, decides they want us to be executor of their estate. They should have that right. Now, after having said that, I want to explain to you, because I say executor and administrator. Now, those are two distinguishing classes. Executor is a person appointed by the person who makes the will. So if I make a will and I appoint someone to be the executor, that's the person who manages my will. Now, administrator is different. Administrator is something like, if I don't have a will and I die, my estate goes to court, and then the court appoints an administrator, that person who would manage the will. Now, the thing is that the court could not appoint me as administrator of my mom's estate because I have a felony conviction. And my mom couldn't name me as executor of her estate because I have a felony conviction. And I am my mom's eldest son. I am the person who she wants to manage that. Now, but that is what the estate, now we named it the FREE Act. That's Families' Right to Estate Equity Act. Now, so free, in keeping with Live Free, in keeping with Fully Free, families' rights to estate equity. And that's all we're looking for. We're looking for the family to have that right restored to them. So if someone wants to hang their hat on, this is what they are seeking. We are not seeking this. We are seeking the right for our families to say who they want to control their estate.
Thank you, Greg. And I would just also add to that, that there are 35 states across the country that have no restriction. And what we've learned is that this particular bill would impact over 600,000 people in the state of Illinois who have a felony conviction on their background. Before we go back to the panelists to give their closing comments, I do just want to briefly talk about too that when I mentioned the cities before, and I know that the Women League Voters has chapters across the state of Illinois, we were able to launch Fully Free and starting from the top, from Rockford, Rock Island, Aurora, who Javier is leading, Chicago, Joliet, Champaign, I can't read my own writing, Peoria, Decatur, Bloomington Normal, Springfield, East St. Louis, and Carbondale. Those were all of the cities that we were able to travel to introduce the campaign and ultimately have a launch event. And then as we transition, I also just wanted to name that what's important to us is even when we think about new policy, is that what we are attempting to do is to go back and to look at, like the Free Act is removing language from the 1975 Probate Act. And so a lot of these laws are old, and we're going back to really to unwind and to break down these different policies so that we can look at how do we begin to remove the barriers and restore the civil rights of individuals coming from incarceration. And so as we close out, I want to give each panelist 30 seconds for closing statements. If you want to share just a closing thought or something that you want people to remember from this panel discussion, I would ask that you would just take 30 seconds and close us out, starting with Maria.
Yes. Okay. I just want to thank everybody for inviting me here to be in this panel, for us being women, with the exception of my brother Marlon, Javier, and Greg. I thank you for having me here. Please, if you want to go to the Fully Free webpage to get information of where we are at with the Free Act, what's going on with our Springfield visits. Please join us. Please let friends and family know about the Free Act and what Fully Free represents. Again, you might know somebody, a neighbor. Your neighbor might have a relative who has been system impacted, and these permanent punishments are just not fair. They're just not fair for people that have already served their time. And again, not only people have served their time, but family members who cannot appoint the executor of their estate because of these permanent punishments. Thank you, Marlon.
Thank you, Maria. Javier? You're on mute, Javier.
I'm sorry, I just had to answer. The door management was here. What's the question, my brother?
In 30 seconds, just leave us with the closing thought or something for the group to reflect on.
We are not our mistakes. We are not. What we bring forth is it's a lot of maturity and just a whole mentality of thinking outside of the box. Our prison system for the last 50 years has not worked. It has not. We continue to warehouse folks, disfranchise Black and brown communities, spend so much money. I'll give you an example. They spend almost $6 million on the Bean downtown. Ask them how much they spend in the Inglewood community to uplift it and build it.
Thank you. Greg, 30 seconds.
All right, thank you all for having me. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Just want to say this: people are not infallible. People fall down. People make mistakes. The thing is, did you learn something from your mistake? Can you get up and do better? I got out 2 days later. I was sitting in a meeting with a state senator pushing a bill that I wrote from prison. I made change, and I'm continuing to make change. And the people on this panel made change and are continuing to make change. And there are so many others out there like us, out there doing what it takes to be successful and to be reintegrated into society. And there would be so many more if these barriers did not exist. Help us tear down these barriers. Thank you. We're all looking to be fully free.
Thank you, Greg. And now I will turn it back over to Janet for questions.
Yes, I've got a number of questions for you. Here was the first one I received. What about child molesters?
Do any of our panelists want to take that?
Yes, can I take it? As a mother of two, I would say that is a tough question to navigate. To look at someone's charge as the charge of what it is to say that there is no redemption at all unless that charge is accepted by society. Okay, and that's not really what the Bible says. I know it is a hard topic to navigate, but when we look at child molesters, we have to look at reform, what they have done. And I would say take it on a case-by-case basis. But we still have to give people the opportunity to rehabilitate themselves and to reintegrate themselves back into society without these permanent punishments after they have served their debt to society. Because if we're going to start pinpointing some of these are fine and some of these are not, then we go back to not being fully free.
Yeah, and I would just add real quick, Janet, I would just also say too that one, I think there should be more investment in rehabilitation. And then the core value of the campaign is that a criminal record shouldn't follow anyone for life. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that there's not stipulations or things that need to happen. But what we're saying is that everyone should have a pathway to be fully free. And that pathway could look different depending on the conviction. So we're not saying that we should just completely remove the punishments and accountability. But what we're saying is, how do we invest more to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to be truly rehabilitated and then have an opportunity to demonstrate that they're a different person and move on with life? That's what the Fully Free campaign is saying.
Hey, thank you. Second question is, when you are disallowed from a job or from chaperoning your children's school events, is that policy coming from a local office manager, from a corporate policy, or from an Illinois state law?
Anyone want, Greg, anybody want to take this question? You on mute.
I can take the question. There are instances where these do come directly from state laws, like for instance, the FREE Act. The FREE Act is derived strictly from a probate law that's on the books that says that if you have a conviction for a felony, you cannot serve as executor or administrator of your loved one's estate. That is a law. Now, there are other laws that are on the books as well that we characterize as permanent punishments. Now, I understand the question because there are some instances where they're just bad actors. They're just bad actors, and bad actors that say, well, I know the law is going to exist, but if I deprive him or her of a job, I can say that they weren't qualified. I'm not going to say that it was by virtue of their conviction or something like that. And so we are getting laws on the books that adequately, that in part addresses that, but not completely. And so what we are doing in the Fully Free campaign is we are trying to completely address this so that people cannot circumvent the laws or the protections that are in place and do what they want to do.
One of the questions can be answered very quickly. What are the bill numbers for the Fully Free piece of legislation?
Senate Bill 3098 and House Bill 4490. They are sponsored by State Senator Adrian Johnson and State Representative Lakeisha Collins.
Thank you. And this also is for you, Greg. Were others aware when you were incarcerated, they were aware you were a police officer? And if so, did you suffer from any of those folks who were serving with you? And then secondly, what is your opinion about adult transitional centers work release? Do you think they work?
Okay, the first one is the easy one. There were times when there were repercussions that I felt, but I think that the Department of Corrections, and it's a special case. I'm not saying it's done in all cases. I think primarily because I was a police officer, that there were certain protections put in place, and so people weren't able to be successful with their persecutions. But it was a difficult journey. And secondly, work release. I think it was a work release related question, correct?
Or the adult transitional centers?
Adult transitional centers. I'm going to defer to someone else because I'm not really familiar with the adult transition centers and how they operate. But I think that judging from the look on Maria's face, she might be able to comment on this.
Yeah, so I was at Fox Valley Adult Transition Center in Aurora, and their alternative to finishing your time in prison. But the way the system has the modules set up, I think needs improvement. I think it needs to be updated to the times now. They did update it to the COVID, but they have not provided services needed for returning women to transition at the best of their abilities. They have to search for jobs, and the job networks that they have are more factory line work, waitressing, things like that. And instead of providing them with education and skills that can, help them grow into what society is now and the type of jobs that there are available for them. Somebody shouldn't just have to come out and after a year of being at the adult transition center, still work 10 hours, making minimum wage, to make it by, especially when you're going to be coming out of the transition center eventually and you want to transition into your own apartment, get things like that. But it is an alternative to remaining in the penal system and being able to slowly pace yourself back into society.
Thank you.
And if I may add to that, this is the reason why we have to be a part of this process, because they think short term. They just really do. They're not looking into how you're going to be able to support your family 5 years from now, 3 years from now. They just want to write on a piece of paper that you have a job, file your case away, and be done with you. And that's not the case.
And just really quick, what I do want to add to that is in these adult transition centers, the paychecks that the returning citizen goes into a trust account. The center or IDOC keep 20% of that, of their wages. And the rest is put into a trust account that they will receive once, their time is up. But also they're only allowed up to a $75 allowance for personals. So yes, you're kind of saving up money, but it's like Javier says, they're thinking short term. Hey, let's get them a job, really get them used to what it is to work again. They have their little personals and things like that, have money to buy food, and then let's get them out. But what about medical? What about family? How are you going to go back and help your children or the people that looked out for your children? So yes, thank you, Marlon.
Yeah, and following up, Javier, again, the diversions that you were talking about, are you then able to avoid that felony tag altogether or not?
Absolutely. What the diversion program offers is an alternative to going to jail. So it's not only me just telling you, okay, well, we know that you're addicted to drugs, so we're not going to send you to jail. No, it's a stringent program that you have to go through. There's different levels to this. This is not for the, if you're not really ready, this is not a program for you. This is a program for someone that's really tired of the mundane, of just the repetitive nature of going to jail, failing, not having a strong support base. So this program is designed to really be effective in the way you view society and how you view self. So diversion program is that what it means? It's diverting you from that lifestyle and really replacing a new one that you can be acclimated to and be productive in society.
And I know you're talking about Kane County right now, and perhaps other people can talk about, there are other diversion programs. The question is, where does the funding come from for these diversion programs?
Well, the funding right now is coming from federal and state as far as the prosecutor's office is concerned. This is their money. They're viewing, and this is one thing. I was with the Kane County prosecutor, Jamie Mosser, and in my life's history, I've never heard an official, someone in her capacity, say that the system is broken. This is her job. She's talking about her job. She got out in front of all of us and said the system is broken. And then someone says, no, it's not. It's designed perfectly to work the way it's working right now. It was designed to work the way it is right now. And she stepped back and said, you know what? I agree. We failed our society. We failed those who have committed crimes in this whole process. So yeah, she's fully vested. And will it go to other places? I hope it does. Do other counties want to see it? No. Are law enforcement against it? Yes. Because they feel like, no, if I catch this guy with drugs, I want to put him in jail. If I catch this guy, stealing, I want him to go to jail. So it's a big pushback. For Elgin to have it, we're working on it to come here to Aurora. But the great thing about it, Janet, is that they're having the conversations that they never had before. We're meeting in these rooms with these officials that their job was to incarcerate us, investigate us, put us away. Now, before, all the researchers were focused in the beginning of this, your incarceration, they investigating, sending you to prison. Now, the same people that were in the forefront of all that are now in the back end figuring out like, wow, we send these guys to jail. What are we doing to help them integrate back to society in a conducive way where they can be successful and not have this revolving door, as they say it?
Thank you.
Janet, Janet, I'd like to cut in here if you don't mind. I have a question that was submitted. Do your organizations work with school children so they understand how getting a felony can affect their future lives?
Well, we directly work with children, with youth at risk and youth that are not at risk, because people tend to focus on the kids that are at risk, and the kids that are not at risk are kind of like on the wayside and have to figure this out on their own. So yeah, most definitely we show by example our lived experience through our kids, you know. So this is not just some outside folks that we're helping. We're actually changing the narrative on how our kids view us, how they view their communities, and the repercussions of not being law-abiding citizens.
I wish we had time for more questions, but this has been a fascinating panel. I really appreciate your sharing your insights with us. And also thank you to our league members and friends of the league for staying informed and engaged in advocacy. I know that Janet has brought a number of these barriers bills to our attention, and I expect that she will. I know she's tracking the FREE Act, so you'll be hearing more about it as it progresses. If people would like more information, please look at the resources on the State League's website. And to receive information about criminal justice activity opportunities or advocacy opportunities, please contact issues@lwvil.org. Ask to be added to the Criminal Justice Google group. Now, please stick around to complete a very brief evaluation poll, and then join us at 5:30 this evening for our next issues briefing session, regulating storage of spent nuclear fuel, which addresses a concurrence that delegates to the League Convention will need to consider at the U.S. League's convention this fall. Thank you very much for joining us.
Maria, Marla, Javier, and Greg, stick around a little bit.
I'm going to stop the recording, and then I